like he was like the most funniest person ever. He'd always say, "Oh, Rabahi."
Remember during...
say like, "Oh, Rabahi."
You guys remember during Shake Loose how we always do that one thing? Like that?
Yeah.
This like rooster hair.
So mad.
Making his face.
He gets so mad for us picking on him with that.
And then he'd go up to you. "I'll cut you." That thing on buckwheat.
Girl, I will
cut you.
Yeah. Or liquid and pesticide.
Kept
Or
talking
the-
about bonk week week.
Or the delicious, you are welcome.
I remember the first time I was at Connie's house and he told me he was going to push me down the steps because I wasn't going fast enough. And I was always scared to go down the steps when Chris was there. It's crazy.
I remember the first night he stayed with us. He was really afraid of my dad and he peed his pants. He did. I remember that. Girl, the back of your hair is ridiculous. He always said that.
SWAT Ministries is a ministry underneath Faith Chapel Ministries, which is underneath Pastor Connie and James Taylor. It's considered our teen ministry with our youth. It has lots of ministries underneath. Dance is one of our biggest ones, which is what Chris's biggest part was. We've been going on 6 years now. It started off with about 17 kids, and it's grown to about consistently 50, I would say. It ranges. It's an awesome ministry. It's brought a lot of us out of things that we were in before we came to Christ or before we knew this group of people to help us grow into who we are today. It's changed lots of our lives. And we're very, very blessed to be in a ministry just like Chris was. And his testimony has a lot to do with the SWAT ministry.
Well, Chris contributed a lot to the youth group. I mean, for like 2 years, we didn't have any guys in our dance team, and he was like the first guy in like a long time that actually joined the dance team, and it really opened the doors for other guys to come in on the dance team. And he contributed a lot to, you know, ministering and preaching. He was really big on that. He really wanted people to come to our church and to see what we do and to accept Christ as their Lord and Savior. I mean, even though he only preached like one service, he was really, you know, he loved that a lot.
Our relationship was really Christ-based. When we talked to each other on the phone, we would do devotions even. We would call each other about how church was and just prayed for each other, not necessarily for our relationship, but for one another, and that we would grow in Christ, and we grew together spiritually, and that's really why our relationship was so strong, was because God was in that. He was the person who I thought I was going to marry. He was supposed to ask me to marry him this past Christmas, and we were gonna get married after college, and just, you know, he wanted to be just all these different things. He wanted to be like a youth pastor, and then he wanted to be a pastor, and he always you know, thought of me like I like a strong woman like his mother, and that I was going to be the greatest pastor's wife. Go into a relationship, we had the best friend bond as well.
You know, the story stopped when Chris used to come home from school, and how kids would pick on him and make fun of him for being gay, and to now he was making all kinds of friends.
I had Chris in my sophomore American history class. Basically, I had him the first period of the day every day for an entire year during his sophomore year. Quite honestly, I would honestly say that given the circumstances, my first year teaching here at Western Brown High School, so new students, new environment, what have you. Chris was the kid that no matter what type of a bad day I had the night before or that week, that every morning you could count on him to come in and be energetic and how's your day going and why are you upset? So he was always lighting up the room, if you will. He had no fears of going up to a kid who seemed depressed or seemed upset and at least addressing them and saying, hey, is everything all right? Is there anything I can do? So I think that was probably his strength as a person, was just being able to just go up to anybody and just even if they didn't want him around, he was at least there to ask them. He was the one asking me how my weekend went or how their weekend went. So great student to have in class.
From the first moment I met Chris, I knew there was something special about this young man. He was more alive and more excited than any student I've ever seen. He didn't know a stranger. When he came in, I know from a tough situation into a foster family, that he was not a bit intimidated by any other students. He came in and started talking to everybody, was very friendly to everybody. That relationship just grew from that point forward. Chris became the backbone of Western Brown. There was not a student that did not know Chris, 9 through 12, probably middle school through 12th grade. Chris was friends with every single possible clique you could imagine. Everything from the rich kids, the athletes, the tough kids. Everybody knew Chris and respected Chris. The most amazing thing about Chris was the most important thing in his life was his Christianity. And there was no doubt whose team Chris was on. He was on Jesus' team, and he made everybody aware of that. From the first day he came in to class, I knew he was a Christian, not because he told me, but because of the way he acted. Chris set a fantastic example for everyone and touched everyone that he was close to. Even those he was not close to, everyone who had contact with him could see Christ through Chris. He was absolutely one of the most strong Christian kids I've ever seen in my life. He had no reservations about talking to other students about Christ, but most importantly, he was not a judgmental Christian. He accepted people where they were and tried to bring them closer to God instead of looking down upon them if they weren't where they needed to be. There just wasn't any part of our school that Chris was not involved in.
When we were at church, Chris began to act different. He began to act weird. And there was a couple people putting vacuum cleaners together to church, and they wanted to borrow my drill gun. and I told Chris to go out to the truck and get my drill gun because I had it. And Chris had my keys in his hand, and he came back. He said, "Dad, I can't get in the truck. It's locked." And I said, "Chris, the keys are in your hand." And he went back to the truck, came back. He said, "Dad, I can't get in it. It's locked." So I told Caleb, "Go get the drill gun out of the truck." Caleb brought the drill gun in, and a young lady in our church, Mary Ann Kestel, was there cleaning, and she was cleaning out a closet. And Chris just automatically jumped in and began to help her. And he was cleaning the closet out. He came in with a cross, and he said, "Dad, what do you want me to do with this cross?" I said, "Well, just throw it away. We don't need it." And the last thing Chris ever carried out of our church was his cross. The last time Chris ever walked out of our church, he was carrying his cross.
That afternoon when James and the boys got home, Chris had come in and sat down and talked with me at the kitchen table. And he was excited about his future. He's a senior. He's got a lot of things coming up in his life, and he was excited and always willing to talk and communicate with what was going on in his life. Well, he had said that he wasn't feeling very well and was going to go take a shower, and went upstairs but came right back down to tell me that he had thrown up, that he just wasn't feeling right. I told him to go lay down for a little while, but he decided to go for a run. So he ran for a short time and then came in, took a shower, laid down for a few minutes, and was going to take a nap before he had to go to work. We were planning on having a family night that evening, so I had gone to the Red Box and rented a couple of his favorite movies. He and Nina wanted to watch Footloose. So I had rented Footloose and another movie, and we had started some of the movies before he went to work. Junk food night, we were preparing, and the whole house was kind of somber that evening. Nobody really wanted to leave. Everyone wanted to be together. And Caleb was supposed to go with Chris, but had just decided that he didn't want to go. He was adamant that he just really didn't want to go. So Chris came down, seen that we were getting ready for the evening, and he didn't want to go to work. And I told Chris, because he wasn't feeling well, if you don't want to go to work, you don't have to go to work. And he said, "No, I need the money. I'm going to college. I need a car. I'm going to work." He was very responsible. He took his responsibilities very serious. So we had told him that we would not start anything. We would not watch Footloose. We wouldn't do anything till he got home. And he was satisfied with that. And like always, "I love you, Mom. I'm going to work. I love you too." And he even looked at all the kids and said, "I love you." They all said, "Love you." And out the door he went. That was roughly 4:30ish. And he left. We finished up watching a movie and just kind of hung out. We started a fire outside, and the kids were roasting hot dogs, and kind of a quiet evening. And I had a phone call from his work asking if he had left for work, and it was shortly after 5. I told them that he did get a late start, but that because of homecoming, he would probably be late. They knew he would be a little late. They were okay with that. I tried to text Chris. I tried to call him for about 30 minutes. He was a very responsible driver, so I knew he wouldn't text me while he was driving. But I thought that if he was stuck in traffic, he might pick up the phone or eventually text me saying, "I'm at work." A good hour had passed, and no one had called me. I hadn't heard from Chris. So I called Frisch's, and I asked them if they had heard from Chris, or had he arrived and maybe got busy and forgot to call me, and there was nothing. So I made a few phone calls, and I texted a few people to see if maybe he had randomly stopped by Phil and Felicia's, or if the traffic was still bad, or hoping that he was misbehaving and skipping work and maybe went to the game instead. But nothing. And I was texting Chris desperately, "You better call me," but really felt like I was quickened by the Spirit
to not be too harsh because I was beginning to have that feeling that something was wrong. More time had passed and no one called. Caleb was doing a lot of pacing. He just was very uncomfortable, but never said anything. So I went upstairs to my office and pedaled around a little bit. And I have a window. And I looked out the window. And I seen 2 state highway patrols pull in. And even though I knew I didn't want to know, I walked down the steps and Caleb came running in the house. Caleb said, "Mom, the police are here." I said, "Okay, I got it, go on outside." All the kids were outside playing basketball. They had a fire going. I went to the door and I slightly opened the door. I didn't want them to come in because I didn't want them to tell me anything. So I opened the door. They said, "Mrs. Taylor, we need to come in and talk to you." I said, "No, you don't. What do you want?" They said, "We really need to come in." And I let them in just a little bit and I said, "Please don't come in. Just tell me what you want." They told me I needed to sit down. And there was such a rush of emotions. It was horrible. I said, "Just tell me, what is it?" And they told me that Chris had died in an automobile accident. I remember just grabbing my head and screaming and crying. They were trying to calm me, but I didn't want them. I didn't want them here. They were very nice, but I just didn't want them here. I got sick. I had to go into the bathroom and I just sat there for a minute. I just felt like everything was just left my body. It was horrible. So they went and they wanted to bring someone in, and I told them they could get Caleb. I was so proud of him. He just took on such an adult responsibility. He was like a man. He wasn't even like a 15-year-old boy. And they told him what happened, and he came right to me, and we were hugging and embracing, and they wanted to get people here with us right away. So we started making some phone calls. And I told them we were fine. They just needed to leave. Just them being here made it so real, and I didn't want it to be real. So we called friends and family, and I called James and told him he needed to come home. And then Nina came in and we told her. And she was in such shock. She just kind of stood there. I was so helpless.